And I generally believe it's a bad idea for founders to hire product people before they have at least light product market fit. I would say I would feel a lot better if they hire their first PM if it's post strong product market fit, because the founder just has too much to do now as they grow the business.
I'm Pulkit Agrawal, and this is the Product Lunchbox, the bite-sized series for product people. In less time than it takes for you to eat lunch, we'll share some distilled insights and tactics from an experienced product operator on a single topic per episode. Really excited to be joined by Ben Erez, who was the first PM at 3 different startups, driving product strategy from the early days to scale at companies like Abstract and Canvas. He led a team at Facebook, focused on small business advertisers, increased revenue by $300 million. It's amazing. And now it provides fractional product management expertise to early stage companies, and also co-hosts a podcast, the Super Insider podcast. So really excited to welcome him. Ben, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I also know that you've been recently sharing some of your wisdom through other formats like a Maven course and teaching product people or aspiring product people. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in addition to advising and doing some fractional product work, I also teach a course on Maven to help people prepare for product sense and analytical thinking interviews at bigger tech companies such as Meta, but not just Meta. And I also do one-on-one coaching, mocks, helping people with their job search. There's a lot of people on the market right now that just need help. And that's been pretty meaningful and rewarding.
That's awesome. I wonder, is that stuff changing really quickly? Like, I imagine like the changes that AI has brought is also appended written exercises, interviews, presentation. Is there anything that you have to share about how that's changed?
The questions that are being asked in these types of structured interviews have surprisingly stayed pretty consistent. I think that the solution space available in things like product sense interviews, when you get to the end of the exercise, have a lot more interesting creative paths that they could go because of generative AI and the power of a lot of these different new technologies we're seeing. But the fundamental process of using structured interviews to filter for the right caliber of talent for a given company, in my experience, hasn't been, sidetracked by the addition of AI and a lot of these breakthroughs.
Interesting. Okay, so I guess the expectation is on the candidates to leverage AI smartly in the solutions and in the answers, even if the questions have stayed the same.
Yeah, it's another technology. I don't think it's actually changing like the process through which companies are currently evaluating candidates on the live sessions. I would imagine that the companies are using AI behind the scenes to probably filter through resumes in different ways and look for certain keywords in the application process. But as far as I can tell from everyone I'm working with, once they get on the phone with a recruiter and enter the official hiring pipeline at a company, things are pretty much the same as they were a few years ago.
Okay. Makes sense. And product sense is such a valuable and maybe ephemeral and hard to capture skill. So it's fascinating that that's something you're trying to teach. Is it teachable? Maybe it is, according to you.
I think product sense is a very loaded topic. Shreyas has a very popular course on it. There's other people teaching and talking about it. What I coach and teach in particular is the product sense interview, which is a very structured, 45-minute session, 5 minutes introduction, 5 minutes of questions at the end, and really 35 minutes in the middle to work through a very ambiguous question like, hey, you're a product manager at Meta, build a product for gardening, right? So it's just like super open-ended, and then you need to come in with a framework and a very clear game plan for how you're going to use that time to give the signal to the interviewer to pass that interview. And that's the specific thing that I teach. And it's got really 4 key elements. It starts with setting the motivation and mission for a product, then getting into the segmentation of who you want to focus on building something for, brainstorming some problems that tie to the user journey for that segment that you want to focus on, picking one of those problems and going deep on potential solutions before you narrow in on one. And if you can, being able to describe what the V1 for that solution might be, and doing all that within 35 minutes while making reasonable assumptions and checking in with an interviewer.
Nice. Yeah, sounds like the consulting case interviews of old that I once had the privilege of doing. But anyway, let's talk about being a first PM. Product sense is an important thing there as well. You've been a first PM multiple times. So curious, how is it different from being an nth PM, and maybe how is it different from being a second PM?
Yeah, so I've been the first PM at 3 different companies. 2 times there was someone in the kind of leadership level that was, overseeing product, and once I was that head of product as well. I've also been the 30th-ish PM at Attentive, which was a Series Z company at the time. And then I was probably the 2000th PM at Facebook when I joined them. So I've seen a really wide breadth of product orgs. The biggest difference really does boil down to the amount of support that you get from the ecosystem around you. So at a place like Facebook, one of the things that makes people really successful is their ability to leverage other functions and to delegate in ways that seem like win-wins and to really kind of grow through others and drive impact through others. There obviously is still a ton of IC work, and increasingly so now than it was a few years back. But to be successful at a place like that, you really do have to learn how to like leverage, dozens of people to get things done and mobilize people who are probably focused on the same exact problems you're focused on and trying to figure out how to like sort things out there. Super early stage companies, you have the opposite problem. There's like not enough people to work on all the things that need to get done. So it's all about resourcefulness, scrappiness, focus, saying no to things, and really embracing an experimental mindset that allows you to get signals really, really fast, like in a matter of days. Whereas at Facebook, you might get signals in the matter of like quarters or years on big hypotheses. So those are a couple of the big differences that come to mind. I'm happy to go deeper if there's other ones you're interested in.
Does it feel like these are two different specialities of product job? Like, is an early stage PM a specific job versus a late stage PM, or is it pretty fungible?
I think they are fundamentally different jobs. And I think that the early stage job isn't even, I would not consider it one job, because the founder that you work with as an early stage first PM is going to literally define the job, because in a lot of ways you're trying to complement that founder and the things that they are not as good at. And if they are a founder that has a lot of product intuition and a really good product sense and a kind of like a vision for where things are going, they probably usually, in my experience, need someone who's going to come in and level up the entire, execution muscle of the company and accelerate the speed of, accelerate velocity, make sure that things are running faster, you're doing more with less, like that kind of like operational rigor, while obviously making a bunch of really good decisions on a day-to-day basis without needing them to chime in on everything. However, if you work with a founder who is less from a product background, more from a go-to-market and kind of sales background, that person might not really have ever put together a product strategy, or they don't really understand how to think about downstream implications of committing to something in a way that a product-minded founder does. So that's a lot more of a consultative thought partnership kind of role. So yeah, whereas at Facebook, I'd say the 1500th PM at Facebook and the 2500 PM at Facebook might have very similar kinds of jobs, because they're all being evaluated in the pretty much same exact way.
Yeah, it feels like this is relevant for anyone joining an early stage team, which is like really understand how you're going to balance with a co-founder. So from a product perspective, what's the advice? If I'm thinking about like, hey, there's potentially an early stage opportunity for me, like what should I be interviewing the founders on certain axes, or what should I be trying to discern from the founder to figure out, is it a good fit for me with what I want to do?
So the first thing I would say is I always point people to the first episode of the Super Insider podcast, because Mark and I went 45 minutes just on the decision of how to think about joining a company as their first PM. So there's a lot of thoughts there, but I would say at a high level, it's about fit and compatibility. There's the relationship, right? So you just need to make sure that this is going to be a successful relationship above all else, because the day-to-day work and the products you work on, the features, even the customers you serve are going to fluctuate over time. But the relationship with the founder is the thing that I would stress test the most and make sure you feel like it can withstand a lot of ups and downs over time. And that there's a lot of trust. And it's hard to shortcut trust, but if you can get that trust and feel really good that it's there, it's going to really increase the chance of success in these roles. And then the other thing I would say is you want to develop your own intuition about the current state of product market fit. And if there is, light product market fit, that's one thing. If it's really strong product market fit, that's another. And if there is no product market fit, which, sometimes you do want to, I like helping. And I really do feel like when things are not working, I just get like really excited to like fix things. So sometimes I do go into environments where there is clearly either light or no product market fit with the goal of establishing it, and making sure you're in alignment with the founder on the current state of things is really important. And I think it's important to build your own conviction around that. So things like, let me talk to your active customers and I want to understand like what they think about your product. And let me talk to some people who you think would be a really good fit in my network and just ask them why they wouldn't buy this today, right? Like I'm just going to go do my own. It's kind of like a form of back channeling, but with the target audience before you join. And if you know 5 people, let's say I was going to come work with you at Chameleon, and I knew 5 people in my network who are perfect users for Chameleon, and I go talk to them about it, I show them the website, I'm like, hey, like this sounds awesome, right? Like why wouldn't you use this? And I get like 0 out of 5 saying they want to use it right now. That's usually a signal to me that there's going to be challenges if I join that company and trying to get people to adopt the product in its current path, versus a world where I come in and 5 out of 5 are like, how do I sign up right now? Right? That's a very different signal. So those are some of the things that I would really keep an eye on when evaluating an early stage role as a first or maybe even second PM.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's move on to, like, you've got the role, you're in it. like the skills to help you be successful? It sounds like it's such a variety of different skills based on where the company is at, but let's assume that we have a product, someone on the co-founding team that has a product hat on, or that's often common, like someone's going to take some responsibility for that. Now with founders being able to do more with AI and being able to have higher leverage, does it mean that the product role is first PM role is less valuable? Should it be hired at a later stage? Any thoughts on how that's changing with founders' skill set changing because of AI?
With or without AI, someone has to get the team to decide what they are going to work on, and then to define the scope of what they're going to work on and make sure it gets de-risked with customers, that it's the problem that the customers really care about, that your solution solves that problem in the right way, and that you've got the feasibility and the viability risks all, and the business value risks and the usability risks all, figured out. Now, I don't think AI today is in a position to execute on those things, but I think it could certainly help a founder describe the context for their company into something like Claude, a Claude project, or ChatGPT, give it all the context that it possibly can absorb about you and your company and your stage and the team and all that stuff. And then say, hey, I'm trying to build something that improves this part of the experience, or I'm trying to solve this problem, or I'm trying to grow in this dimension. What are some ideas for doing that, right? So you can kind of use AI, I think, as a founder and really start to formulate a lot of your thinking as either pre-work for hiring your first product person, or as ways to just beef up your own ability as a product person. But if things continue working, I generally believe it's a bad idea for founders to hire product people before they have at least light product market fit. I would say I would feel a lot better if they hire their first PM if it's post strong product market fit, because the founder just has too much to do now as they grow the business. Then at that point, hopefully the founder has, whether it's through AI or just whoever their advisors or their network, they've figured out kind of what the job is. And if they think that, hey, we don't need a PM, we can just get by without a person doing this job, that's great. I look at companies like Linear, where my friend Nan runs product, and I think they've gotten to 60 people at that company with 2 PMs. And for a long time, it was just Nan as the head of product, and they had engineers and designers working together to build a lot of things and solve a lot of problems, because they screened for certain types of product-minded engineers and for technically minded designers who understand the problem they're solving really well. So I think there is a world where I think you can get by quite a while without having to really build out the product function. But if you're not willing to make those investments and you're hiring your average run-of-the-mill engineer and your average run-of-the-mill designer, they're usually going to be looking to someone to tell them where to focus. What should I be doing? And if that's going to be the founder, that works. But I think in my experience, at some point, the founder needs help, and that's what the PM would be doing.
We're seeing in our own team that designers are taking more responsibility for product. It's already, specs are closer to Figma. They're collaborating more closely with engineers. There's shorter cycles to make improvements and adjustments. So in many ways, they're doing a lot of product work that maybe 5 or 10 years ago, a product manager would be responsible for. And I imagine that's happening in lots of cases. So are PMs just being squeezed out? Do we feel like there is still a future for PMs in 5 years? And will designers evolve to be the new PM, or will some engineers evolve? And, you need that one other skill set, like design or technical. Any thoughts on that?
I think the PMs are least needed when engineering likes to work out of Figma. So I think if you could have designers play the PM role really strongly and I actually like using Figma as PRDs and not using docs. Sometimes I've worked with engineering people who just need to read things in a linear doc-like fashion in order to understand and leave comments. It's just how some people's brains work. So, for those people, docs make sense. But my favorite kind of collaborations with design have been when we could get everything figured out with the right kind of notes and note annotations in Figma, and then engineers can look at that and be like, yep, I get it, I'll just build that, right? And that could work for a while. It still doesn't solve the problem of what should we focus on, right? So I think that the moment you kind of transition from how do we build a dope experience that fits within our current design system and our components and fits within the kind of we don't have to break and reinvent the entire UI to build this new thing, but rather we have patterns that we could reuse. But the moment you kind of get to the question of what should we focus on, right? What's the right problem to solve next and for who? In my experience, that's where designers usually tap out. They have a lot of opinions on what would make the product more usable and improve and increase the quality of the UX of the product. But that's often not what you need. What you need is to be thinking about step function changes to the bottom line of the business and the outcomes and the impact of the business. And I've certainly worked with some designers that have really strategic thoughts on that. I think they are rare. Even though they're taking more of the PM role, I don't think that's magically overnight made a lot of designers more like business first mindset. And I think similarly about engineers, some engineers just like love building, they love coding, they fall in love with the systems and the architecture. And those are often not the people that are zooming out and thinking about the forest and thinking about like where things should go in the long term either. In an environment where you could find those unicorn engineers and designers to do that kind of like more longer term proactive thought about where the product should go and what the customers need, and carve out the time to talk to customers regularly, as well as every other function in the business, which is what PMs do. You'll essentially reverse engineer what we currently call a PM. If they end up taking on all those roles, it'll just be a PM that designs or a PM that codes. So I think the function itself is not going anywhere because the function emerges in the need to just do what you do as a company, in my opinion. So I don't think it's going away.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like the focus becomes asking the right question or making sure we have the right signal to noise to make the decisions of where we spend time. And so like getting that data becomes really key. Now there's probably a bunch of already on systems for collecting that data, support tickets that you can pass through with AI, etc. So, where is there alpha in, or how can we, PMs do a good job in collecting data, or any kind of tips or tricks or suggestions on like, let's be data and bring a data-driven mentality or really add value in terms of helping the team ask the right questions?
Yeah, generally speaking, there's, kind of two high-level buckets of data, right? There's qualitative data and then there's quantitative data. Quantitative data being things like you see in analytic systems like Mixpanel or Amplitude, measuring things. Surveys are kind of an interesting hybrid because surveys often ask open-ended questions, and they can ask people to share stories or insights or just opinions about things. But they can also include things like rate the importance of this, or rate how often you do this. So there's some quantitative side to that. I think knowing which data to collect at which moment is really important. We actually did an episode on this with Alex Hanthorn, who and had on the podcast here. We had him on our podcast and went deep on just like user research in early stage companies versus late stage companies. So I'd once again send people to that episode. We spent an hour on it, but I think right sizing the tactic, right sizing the tool to the question at hand and the risk at hand is always important. I think doing research for the sake of research is a bad idea in my experience. But if there's a specific risk that you're worried about, like, do people care about this problem we're trying to solve? That sounds like it's an open question. How can we validate that? Let's go talk to some people. I think if you are trying to more like understand, hey, there's this feature we're thinking about killing. Has anyone like used it in the last year? That's a question you could use some, quantitative data for. So I think I forget the original question you asked, but I do think that early stage companies, especially in a lot of those potentially pre-product market fit stage that I've been mentioning I work at, it's a lot about discovery and zigzagging and talking to people. And one thing I really like from a recent lightning lesson I hosted with Nan from Linear is he just believes in customer immersion should be 50% of every PM's job. So you should just be spending 50% of your time either emailing customers or scheduling calls with customers or just getting their ideas or just going to shadow them. It's arguably not qualitative or quantitative in nature to do that. But what you're doing is you're creating an environment for osmosis to happen where you just start literally absorbing and living and seeing the world through the eyes of your customers. And that is going to develop an intuition, which is very important for finding product market fit because there's an infinite number of things you could do and an infinite number of experiments you could run. So an intuition allows you to create a constructive and productive form of bias that tells you what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. And I think it also allows you to have unexpected leaps in understanding. If you're specifically going to search for a question in an analytics tool, the scope of what you might learn is relatively limited. So yeah, completely makes sense to spend as much time as you can with customers. Okay. I know we kind of ran through time pretty quickly. So maybe let's end with a couple of quick fire questions. So maybe the first one is like, what are your go-to product learning resources? If you want to learn more about product, where do you end up going to?
I learn a lot from the fellow members of the Supra community. I learn a lot from hosting that podcast that I mentioned, Supra Insider. And then I do love Lenny's podcast, and I think he asks really good questions from world-class, leaders in the product space. So those are just a few of them.
Great. Any favorite tools right now that you're using or products?
Better Dictation has been a really good tool for transcription using Whisper. So I've been using AI a lot more, and typing is very slow and clunky sometimes. So just talking into the AI systems has been really helpful. So I really like that tool. And then another one that I've started using recently is called Granola, and Granola takes notes. It's actually doing it right now as we're talking. It's listening to the audio from my machine and my microphone input, and it's generating a transcript of calls in a way that doesn't feel creepy by having like a robot join the call with us. So I've really been enjoying that. And it's helping me not lose things or forget them.
Doesn't seem creepy, but maybe is creepier.
It's just imagine I was just superhuman at taking notes while we talk. That's what it's doing. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Cool. All right. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate you joining and sharing your wisdom. So much to dig into. And we'll try to point people to the more detailed versions of your thoughts in the other places that you've left them. Oh, and one last question. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it?
I would say LinkedIn is a really good way to get in touch with me. I think my DMs should be open there. Feel free to connect with me, add a note. Yeah, that's a good way to be in touch.
Thanks for tuning in to the Product Lunchbox. Other episodes where I chat with current operators to get tactical advice include topics such as PMing data products, running product in a low meeting culture, designers as PMs, going from 1 to 10 in AI, and lots more. You can catch them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. If you have a question, topic, or a guest suggestion, then please look me up and DM me on LinkedIn. Thanks for your attention.